So this was a video that I wanted to make after seeing a Twitter post talking about how Kiriko's damage output was broken a few days ago, and I thought it would be a good excuse to talk about, projectiles versus hit scan, the philosophies behind balance for each of them, using Kiriko as kind of the catalyst, and then also just talk about Kiriko on her own, because she is a hero that has a very low win rate, but that people just say is broken. And there is a reason for that, and it is valid to complain about Kiriko. But then Metro made a very goofy tweet, and the entirety of Twitter just erupted into goddamn civil war between supports and DPS. And it was just complete chaos. There were bodies lining the street, just absolutely horrible atrocities everywhere you looked, and more things to bring up. So I figured I'd wait a bit to hopefully let everything end before talking about Kiriko. Starting with the first post I saw, it was for Overwatch Anonymous. Great place to look to just see people go ham on each other. But the post was, people need to stop complaining about Kiriko headshot when a lot of heroes have the ability to two-shot. It's not like you're going to hit every single kunai, people just don't like that a support hero can do this. Yours truly, a Kiriko main. To which one of the responses was, almost anyone remotely decent knows the kunai damage is busted. It'd be remotely balanced if she had to actually get close to do that kind of damage, not throw it across the map and diff Widows. It's almost ironic that Widow has damage fall off and kunai doesn't. And this tweet I just found funny. First off, they start off with almost anyone remotely decent knows the kunai damage is busted, immediately implying that anyone who disagrees with you is dumb, stupid, and bad at the game. Great start to an argument. You can tell that this user is a veteran of internet arguments, considering that they started off with a left hook like that. But the main thing is that Kiriko's damage is just not that great. If you compare it to something like Cassidy's primary, or something closer that's a projectile could be Torbjorn's primary, it's quite literally worse in every single way. She only gets actual decent damage when getting a critical, and if she does not get a critical, her damage is actually awful. Unless a Kiriko is getting constant criticals with perfect accuracy, which is kind of really silly and unrealistic to expect, then her damage without criticals is less than Ana's damage output, and Ana has hit scan with no damage fall off because reasons, I guess, and the massive inconsistency in her damage is a big reason why Kiriko has a very bad win rate and just was not a good hero. I say was because right now she's pretty fucking broken, but that's more of a symptom of Roadhog and then Mauga both being incredibly good, and Kiriko plays well with them just because he negates their one weakness of Ana's biotic grenade. But before that, I basically played Kiriko Season 1, then they nerfed her and I just kind of went back to playing Lucio, Zen, Ana, just mainly off supports, and then Ana if I have to. But to get back on track, the reason that kunai has no damage fall off is of course because it's a projectile, and projectile weapons for the most part don't have any damage fall off. This is primarily because they can be difficult to hit at range compared to hit scan, so hit scan has damage fall off, mainly because it would be incredibly oppressive if it did not and people were just able to melt you from 20,000 feet away as Soldier 76 or Cassidy. And then meanwhile, projectiles usually are allowed to deal full damage regardless of distance traveled, simply because the further the distance, the less likely the projectile is to hit. Projectile characters always have a massive element of randomness to their kit because you cannot perfectly predict every single person's movement. If you see someone walking out of spawn and you were to perfectly predict them, fire your projectile so that it would be a critical, it would still miss if the person changes their movement at all compared to what you predicted. And this is just hitting them at all, not even necessarily getting a critical hit on them. Projectiles in general are just very inconsistent and random. And because of the inherent randomness, it's something that's just annoying to fight against. It's not broken, it's just annoying to randomly get two-tapped from across the map. And I think that really defines Kiriko as a character. It's not that she's broken or overpowered, she's just obnoxious and annoying. And the inconsistency with her abilities is a big reason why she has such a low win rate compared to other supports that just have much more consistent utility or damage behind them. I also feel like it's kind of funny that they mentioned diffing Widows with it when killing a Widow with kunai from across the map would require first peeking a Widowmaker twice and not being headshot and instantly killed, and also for the Widowmaker to be standing completely still, because of course at the range that Widowmakers usually play at, actually strafing and mixing up what direction you're strafing, even with the slowed movement speed from being scoped in, is probably going to be enough to get you out of the way of any projectiles that were meant for you. Again, depending on which direction the person predicted you would strafe in, which just leads to it being a 50-50, or I guess more like a 30-30-30, because you could always have the option of just standing still and not going to either side. It really depends on what the person you're playing against is doing with their projectiles and the individual habits of the projectile player that you are against. So before I talk about Suzu and Swift Step and how those abilities are also very stupid, first let's just get it out of the way and talk about the Metro clip. This clip is a horrible example of a problem that is kind of correct, mainly because he doesn't really give a point. He just kind of complains about Kiriko existing because he died for doing something stupid. I'll just play the clip for you.
I'm playing up.
Yeah.
They're looking at me now.
I dare you.
I'm gonna pull the
It is so ridiculous that he can do that, right? He is absolute shitter. See, if the Sojourn commits, right, he dies because it's fair. If the Kiri commits, she can just get out after missing everything. That was the perfect example. These last 20 seconds showed everything that's wrong in Overwatch.
So the first thing, if you didn't notice, his team is defending third point in this clip, just in case you did not know that. When he tries to poke, gets rolled, and then tries to disengage and run because he's playing a character that has mobility on a 0-second cooldown. Then Kiriko goes after him. He pops healing station, fights her off, and then she just teleports back to her team. Then Sojourn just decides to int in with slide and lose the 1v1. And then the Kiriko comes back because he's still just in their backline trying to run down main, and then Kiriko kills him. So the point he's trying to make here is that Kiriko can go in, make a lot of mistakes, and then get out for free, and that's why the game is broken. When in the clip, he is also making a ton of mistakes. My favorite response from him is people complaining about the aim in this clip, while this is actually very good accuracy against her stick hitbox, while C misses every shot. There was also tweets from other people complaining that people were nitpicking Metro's gameplay while not nitpicking the Kiriko's gameplay, so I figured why not do both. So let's go over the clip. While I can't really see her perspective, going based on the sound effects, Kiriko throws 12 kunais in the clip and lands 3 of them, with one of them being a critical hit, giving Kiriko a total accuracy of 25%. Meanwhile, Metro fires approximately 21 bullets, and for his sake, I opted to not include any of the bullets fired at the Kiriko whilst he was in phone from Suzu, just because we can't tell if they would have actually hit or not. And out of those 21 bullets, he lands only 5 of them, giving him a total accuracy of 24%. So yes, in this clip, the Kiriko is actually playing better than Metro is, and yet C is the one that is forced back. And that's not even to mention how Soldier is probably one of the hardest heroes to hit with projectiles, just because he has a 50% speed boost on a 0-second cooldown, making it very difficult to hit him. And again, also projectiles just being a bit harder to land than hit scan in general, due to how you have to predict someone's movement. And even if you were to predict exactly where they would have been, if they strafe the moment that you throw it, it's just gonna miss anyways. And this doesn't even mention that in this clip, Metro fires 2 Helix rockets that deal 120 damage on a direct hit, and he just fires both of them into the fucking ground. Because if we're talking about which character is more forgiving to play as, I'd say it would be the character that you can miss 75% of your bullets and then throw both cooldowns directly into the floor and still win a fight. But getting back on topic, apparently it's very good to have 24% accuracy on Soldier 76. So if you have more than 24% accuracy as Soldier 76, then you're officially a better Soldier player than Metro. So please like the video and comment if you are a better Soldier player than Metro. And I think my favorite follow-up from Metro, of course, my favorite is when he came back because he got healed for free, support passive only, to then miss another 4 shots just to kill me with a melee. Support players are delusional. This is kind of goofy because, one, you can see clearly in the kill cam, C kills him with a left click and a melee. You just can't really tell because the left click does almost no damage if it's not a critical. And also the reason he died was because he got low from fighting a Sojourn, and then Kiriko just came back because he's still just standing in the same spot in the enemy team's backline. And even after killing the Sojourn, he then proceeds to sprint down main instead of going back to hide and maybe look for a health pack or wait 2 seconds for his cooldown that heals himself to full to come back online. He just proceeds to run down main and then sees the Kiriko and then goes and runs into a corner instead of trying to run away. Whereas if he ran away instead of trying to hide in a corner, he'd actually have a pretty good chance of getting out just because he can strafe and zigzag. Like, have you ever seen the thing where if you get chased by a crocodile, you just gotta like zigzag He could do that with like 50% extra movement speed, and that's what you do. If you're being chased by a Kiriko, you just zigzag. She has a projectile that only does damage if she gets a critical. So if you run away while sprinting a soldier, it hides your head hitbox pretty well, and you can just get away very easily, because first off, you're just very hard to hit, and also even if she does hit you, if it's not a critical, Metro still would have lived. And then he could have just dropped his healing station, which is stronger than any support ability in the game. And people want to act like the Kiriko misplayed. No, Metro misplayed everything, and he got rewarded because he's playing a broken character, and Kiriko had to use all of her cooldowns and escape. If this was just a clip about Swift Step, then I would agree. Because I do not like Swift Step, I think it's a bad design. But Kiriko chased after a target that was 80 health. Metro is then able to almost get away because he has a movement ability on a 0-second cooldown, then drops Healing Station, which heals for 200 health, almost double the amount that Bap's Regen Burst does. He then proceeds to miss every single bullet, while firing cooldowns into the ground to effectively deal damage instead of having to actually hit them, and then still wins the fight. If this clip showcases anything, it's just how forgiving Soldier 76 is to play, that you can go peek, fuck up a flank this badly, and then still get a kill out of it. And if you didn't misplay at the end, he could have gotten out. And if he didn't miss 75% of his bullets, he also could have killed the Kiriko as well. Later on, in an effort to try and cope and also try and rage bait, Metro made this tweet, which is just blatantly inaccurate. First of all, he initially tries to compare hit scan to projectile, and then later tries to correct it, saying this is not the gotcha moment you were hoping for. Meanwhile, none of these images are actually accurate whatsoever. Maybe he's too used to playing Soldier 76 and aiming at the ground, but you cannot hit underneath Tracer's feet and hit her with projectile, or hit scan for that matter. These images are just kind of complete bullshit, made to approximate the size of the hitbox, but in reality, they just put a big border around the character and then made it bigger, which is something anyone could do. Just open Photoshop and just give Tracer a pink border. Then you can make the Kiriko Kunai hitbox as big or as small as you wanted it to. Basically, none of this is accurate at all, but I really do not want to get into hitboxes in Overwatch, especially for projectiles, just because of how screwed they are. Like, they're really, really bad. Just look at this, and this is not a critical for some reason. I don't know what's happening here, but this is just not a critical, but it's only sometimes not a critical. I think if I throw the kunai at a specific frame of Tracer's breathing animation, it might be a critical. But yeah, projectile hitboxes are stupid in multiple ways, both good and bad, and basically impossible to accurately measure because of how they work. All projectiles will use the same hitbox. There's no special Kiriko exclusive baby mode hitbox. It's just a projectile hitbox. It might not even work that way anymore in Overwatch 2. And then of course projectiles have an actual size to them, compared to hit scan, which basically just draws a straight line from your weapon to where you were aiming, and then if that intersects with the hitbox, then that's a hit. Meanwhile, because projectiles have travel time, projectiles have their own hitbox as well that can vary in size, and then if that intersects the player hitbox, then it counts as a hit, but because of its three-dimensionality, that can be extremely jank. The other thing of Overwatch's hitboxes in particular is that a lot of players don't know what they look like because they don't actually match the character model. This kind of ties into a complaint people have with Kiriko, that her hitbox is too small, when in reality it's much bigger than you think it would be, because you see her character model in-game, and that's the only thing you have to base your assumptions off of, when in reality the actual hitbox for the character is bigger than the character model itself. What is cool is that there's actually a reply in which someone posted the actual hitbox for Tracer, including videos which I won't show, but it's very cool to see, because yes, this is the actual hitbox used in game for hit detection for Tracer, for both hit scan and projectile. Okay, so small hitbox rant over, back to the main topic. But now back to Kiriko and her balance. Suzu, I think, is one of the most misunderstood abilities in the entire game, because I think that people just hear invulnerability and their brain just turns off and they think, damn, that's broken. When in reality, the invuln lasts for a very small period of time, which makes it very inconsistent in terms of how much value you're actually going to get out of it. The most recent patch, they nerfed Suzu by removing, 0.2 seconds from the invulnerability, and then giving it 40 more healing. And like, that's a net buff. You take the guaranteed value from healing over the potential value of an invulnerability any day. Like, if I'm low, at least not in a situation where there's an easy way you can exploit the invulnerability to avoid a massive amount of damage, such as, you know, Sigma's Flux, maybe some kind of, you know, big grav combo or ultimate. And even then, if you're in a grav and you throw Suzu, you're probably still gonna die immediately afterwards because grav lasts for far longer than the invulnerability from Suzu does. But in most cases that are a 1v1 scenario, the healing is just going to be much better. Let's say, for instance, you're fighting against a Cassidy. You have the option between a half second of invuln and 70 health. You only get one of them. It's not like this is a good comparison, but I think it kind of paints the picture of why the healing is better. If you were low and you pick the invuln, then you'll be able to survive one bullet from the Cassidy, but you don't know if he's going to just miss anyways or not. Meanwhile, if you took 70 health, you can tank an additional bullet that's a non-crit no matter what happens. He could miss 2 bullets and you'd still get the value from the healing. Whereas if he's going to miss the bullet that you use the invuln for, you don't really get value out of it in a weird kind of way. I don't know, maybe this isn't the best comparison to use. I don't know. The point I'm trying to make is that receiving healing is guaranteed value. That health will always be with you, while an invulnerability is temporary value. If you can exploit it, it can be incredibly good. You can use it against Diva Bomb, against, you know, Sigma Flux if you're able to. If there's no way to exploit it, then it's definitely very powerful. But in common game situations, the healing is just always going to provide more guaranteed value in the long run. This is why I kind of think that the change to Suzu was a net buff and not a nerf, because he just gets a lot of healing for losing a very small amount of invulnerability, which probably wasn't going to do anything for her anyways in like half of the situations that she uses the ability in. I mean, because of that, if I were to change this ability, I would just say remove the invulnerability completely. I don't think that it matters. I feel like you can't increase the healing any more than it already is. 80 burst healing is kind of a lot, so you could maybe just reduce the cooldown and still keep the cleanse. It's just weird that people say just make it a cleanse when that's really bad. The whole reason it had invuln in the first place was because if you're ever playing the game against a hero that does not inflict a negative status effect, it's just a dead cooldown, which is the whole reason why it has the invulnerability. So you have to make it do something outside of that, so I feel like flat healing would be fine, because people seem to complain a lot about invulnerability, even though there's so many other abilities that just do the same thing as Suzu, but better. If you're talking about personal protection abilities, Reaper's Wraith Form, Genji's Deflect, I mean, technically there's like 3 different heroes that can damage Genji through deflect, but like he can even deflect melee weapons, so he deflects almost everything, and deflect basically makes him immune to all damage from the front. I mean, with exceptions. It's also on a lower cooldown, it lasts for longer than Suzu does, and it also deflects damage, meaning it has a lot of offensive value as well. You can throw back entire ultimate abilities with it. A better comparison to Suzu would just be Zarya's ally bubble, kind of just better in every way. Maybe unless the person you bubble is taking 1,000 damage currently, but bubble lasts for 2 seconds, or you have to deal damage to it to destroy it. Bubble also cleanses negative status effects, and in addition it's also on a lower cooldown and also is an instant cast. Only negative would be that it's a single target ability, but the fact that it just lasts for so long, in most situations you find yourself in, if you're fighting against someone, you're probably in more danger if they get Zarya bubbled than if they get Suzu'd, because a Zarya bubble is basically 2 seconds if you can't damage them, while Suzu is only half a second. And even if you do decide to try and destroy Bubble, you're first going to have to use ammo to do so, meaning that you might be forced to reload before you can finish off the target after destroying the Bubble. And also at the bare minimum, it's still going to last longer than Suzu's invulnerability does. So yeah, you can ignore me, I'm just some deranged lunatic that's making a YouTube video right now. Because I did just want to talk about projectiles and fall off and how it's balanced and the risk reward between them, and why projectiles get to have no fall off damage while hit scan does, but then there's always some exceptions. But instead it just turned into Kiriko video, and then Metro just had to post a Twitter video. So yeah, just TLDR, I think Suzu is very overrated compared to the number of other abilities in the game. Either personal abilities that heroes have that only impact themselves, or, you know, Zarya ally bubble, are all just as good, if not better, and Protection Suzu is kind of really overrated as an ability. Because the same thing with projectiles, people are like, oh yeah, it could block like 10,000 damage, but it could also effectively do nothing if the person was going to miss every bullet anyways. Again, just another example of how Kiriko gets inconsistent value from her kit, and that's kind of why she's annoying to play against, but she's not really broken because it is inconsistent. It's annoying when she gets a high roll, but that's balanced out, balance in quotation marks, out by the lows, but you don't see the lows, you only see the highs, so people have a very skewed perception of her as a character and just think she's broken. And I'll talk about why that's a really bad thing for the game, but first, to finish off her abilities, to talk about Swift Step. I hate this ability. This is the one ability I don't like because it basically forces Kiriko to have a stupid flanker playstyle, which I don't really like for supporting. I like to actually play the game like a support and not a third DPS. That's the reason why I enjoy playing support, is because it's actually different from every other first-person shooter on the market. Your objective is completely different. Instead of trying to confirm kills, you're more trying to improve the overall value that your team is getting through timing abilities and being at the right place in the right time and learning when and how to position in order to do that. It's very fun, and I enjoy learning the supports in particular because of that. I do play Flex Overwatch 1. Prior to the existence of role queue, I was the person who would pick last and just try to fill in team comps. Then after role queue, I ended up being top 500 on both tank and support because those were just the two roles that I actually got to play being a flex player. But I mean, I'm not too much of a big fan of how they've done tanks in Overwatch 2, with them just being more of a fat DPS character. So I've more so just stuck to support since then and have not really grinded tank much at all, aside from, playing the new ones and trying to learn them. But back to Swift Step, I just do not like it as an ability. It's broken because it's a get out of jail free card, because you can just teleport to any ally. The problem is teleporting to any ally through walls is kind of insanely strong, but at the same time, it's a massive limit to how you can use the ability. Swift Step is incredibly difficult to use defensively, because let's say you're actually trying to play Kiriko like a support and not like a third DPS, where you try and pressure a character from range, you try and heal people, you don't go on flanks. Say you get, the tracers on you. You have two options for Swift Step: teleport to your other support who's probably right next to you, or teleport to your front line. One of these options basically does nothing, and is usually the one you take, because the other option is basically a suicide button. And it's kind of because of that I don't think you can really limit Swift Step by saying that you can't use it through walls, because you're already limited to only having 4 potential targets to use it on. Further limiting that will basically make it unusable. The only thing that they could do is to, reduce the range of it, so that if you are on a very deep flank, you won't be in range of your teammates to get out, which in that point, it's not exactly a get out of jail free card, because you'd have to get close enough to your teammates first before you teleport, which I feel like would be a much more fun game to play, where you try and pressure them while also falling back so you get into that smaller range to teleport out to your team. But aside from that, I can't really think of anything, because you basically have to completely rework the ability into something different, because limiting the range is the only way you can balance it without just straight up killing the ability. And even if you do nerf the range, there will still be a lot of times where Kiriko can kind of just get out of jail for free because a teammate is close enough, especially on certain maps. Just because of the layout of the geometry, there could just be a very close by place that's very safe that she can teleport to, that a teammate will usually be playing at, be it a flank route or the back line, someone coming out of spawn, etc. Now, I'm sorry about the length, but I do want to talk about why community perception of a character being broken, when in reality they just get very inconsistent value, which leads to people always seeing the highs and being annoyed by it, and rightfully so, but not seeing the lows that keep the character's win rate and potential value in check. And this is mainly bad because it makes it so that Blizzard can't really fix the character. Because like it or not, Blizzard has clearly been listening to the community a fair amount in terms of balance. The recent Mauga nerfs, they basically said within a day that they were going to roll back one of them before they even get data, just because people did not like that change. I still think they made a mistake because they did not remove some of the damage resist from his cardiac overdrive when they gave him a lot more armor. But besides that, Blizzard is actually listening to the community. And it becomes a problem when people think a character is overpowered when they're actually underperforming, because often people just say overpowered or broken when they really just means they're annoying or obnoxious to play against. But then people just start saying that they're broken and overpowered, and that just becomes the entire talking point, and not, you know, there are parts of this character's kit that are not fun to play against, we need to change them. Because Blizzard knows that they can't buff Kiriko because people will go fucking ballistic if they do. So they have to just keep doing these weird micro half nerfs to try and appeal to people while also buffing her. Kinda like the change to Suzu. But even then I saw a lot of people on Twitter being like, why did they buff Suzu? I like the nerf, but why did they buff it? And they're buffing it because he's not really broken. I mean, they can't change her kunai at all because it's already a super inconsistent weapon. If they were to nerf it, they'd also have to massively buff it in some way, and people would just go insane because of that. So Kiriko's kind of just stuck in this endless zone of being a not great character that's annoying to play against, but they can't nerf the parts of her that are annoying because people think that she's overpowered, and if they buff her, people are going to go ballistic. Orisa's another character that's in a similar boat where she's obnoxious to play against, but they can't really in good faith nerf her because she is by far the worst performing tank in the entire game. A lot of that could just be from people thinking that counter picking is a thing and that Orisa counters like every character, when in reality that almost never works. They bust out the Orisa and then start to lose even harder. Even end of season 7, I just played a lot of Kiriko with Roadhog because my friend wanted to play Roadhog. So I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna play Kiriko and enable you because I don't really play this character much anymore. Ended up going like 35 and 15 and getting both accounts to Grandmaster 1. I mean, technically his got to GM 1, mine was stuck at GM 2 because we went like 5 and 2 one time and I deranked for some reason. But you get the idea. He was hyped whenever people tried to counterpick Orisa because it literally never worked a single time. People would just counterpick Orisa into instant lose because the game just does not work like that. And that also gets into why Kiriko I'd say is strong right now, because he's just an extremely good heal bot character, one of the best in the game. Suzu negates the one weakness that Roadhog and Mauga have, Biotic Grenade, and also her ultimate is still really good. People forget that when Kiriko first came out, and she had, you know, 120 damage criticals, the invulnerability from Suzu lasted almost a full second, and the general consensus among Overwatch League players and professionals was that she was very mediocre. She was a mediocre character with an incredibly broken ultimate, and basically the entire meta for that point in time was just built around which characters could use Kiriko's ultimate the best, which is why we had Winston and Reaper. With the 3 times cooldown reduction that Kiriko's ultimate had back then, you could have, you know, a bubble up all the time as Winston. You could jump and then instantly have your jump back in 1.5 seconds. And the goofy thing was that you kept the buff of the ultimate for, you know, like a 1.5 seconds after leaving it. So you could jump out of the ultimate onto, you know, an Ana or another support, bubble, kill them. As soon as you kill them, you're already going to have your ultimate back. And you're going to kill them very fast because you still get the increased damage from the ultimate, from the fire rate as Winston. So you can just jump on them, kill them, and then immediately jump back into the ultimate, and then get the buff again and get your jump cooldown back instantly, and then also get your bubble cooldown back in like 2 seconds. And then Reaper, the same thing. You use your ultimate with Kiriko's ultimate, it's insanely good. Reaper with 50% faster fire rate and movement speed was also very good, virtually unkillable because of his lifesteal. And of course you ran Sojourn because Sojourn was basically broken. You used her with every comp, and then the other support I believe was a Lucio to kind of tie the comp together and speed around both the Reaper as well as the Winston, and also was good because you don't infringe on the healing that the Kiriko provided, because the whole point was you just farm ultimate. One of the best Kirikos in Overwatch League was Fielder, and they basically never threw a single kunai because, I mean, that just wasn't how you play the character. You just heal bot, you get ultimate, and you try and maximize the amount of value that you can get out of Suzu. And she's kind of still the same way right now. It's mainly only worth it to run with a hero like a Roadhog or Mauga, where they basically want a pocket at all times, and pocketing them also gives you your ultimate, which is still a pretty strong ultimate, even though it's been nerfed. You can get it like extremely fast, and you basically just heal bot. With Roadhog, you just heal bot the Roadhog, cleanse him if he gets antied. You just use Kunai if he ever hooks someone to help him confirm the kill, because he doesn't really get the one shot off of hook anymore. And then that's just how you play the character. Same thing with Mauga. You just hold right click on the Mauga, you follow him around, and then you maybe like throw out one Kunai between every heal just to, you know, maybe get some free damage on someone, or get a pick on a low health target. And then Mauga actually synergizes insanely well with Kiriko ultimate, because he heals and sustains himself off of dealing damage, and Kiriko ultimate gives you 50% faster fire rate, allowing him to heal himself even faster. And then of course he also gets his cardiac overdrive back faster after he uses it. So a character that's actually seeing success and is kind of broken right now, but not for any of the reasons that people are complaining about on Twitter. So yeah, I feel like that concludes this. Sorry it's very long and kind of rambly, but this is what happens when I try and write a script for a video and then stuff happens. The story gets very big and I just keep waiting and trying to make a video about it, but then more stuff happens and I have to redo it because I'm just not even bothering to go off of a script anymore, and then I don't like how it's turning out, so I have to do it all again. And I think of a different opinion because, I mean, I'm not a person to be too strong of opinions. Opinions are just thoughts on subjects based on your knowledge about them, and if I learn new things, then of course my opinion will update accordingly. Not to say I don't have opinions, but just that they're not very strong ones, just because I know that I don't know everything. There could be other factors that I'm not considering, and it's important to have an open mind and actually consider changing your stance if you learn about things that change your outlook or completely change how you view a problem or a situation in general. Because sometimes you just have a different viewpoint than someone else, and if you are able to see things from their point of view, then that could change or even, you know, recontextualize all of the previous information that you were building off of. This is a stupid way to end the video. I think I'm going mental. I'm just gonna stop now. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Goodbye.